know that. And this is not the right metaphor. I don't like to use this metaphor. But when you think about the technological strides that were made during World War II in this crisis, that's when there is this demand for transitional technologies. And we are in a crisis right now, and that is why we have to use it as an opportunity. A second enlightenment. Boldness is required. Tinkering at the edges didn't put a man on the moon. Let's see if I can find the quote. Here's a quote. It says, "It is truly a time to think big. We need to get to the moon of clean energy. Our current policies will not get us to Cleveland." Now, that's kind of a controversial statement because my roommate in Washington, D.C. is Ted Strickland, now the governor of Ohio. And he didn't like this. He says, "Why are you always picking on Cleveland?" And it was because, anyway, a long story, but in any event. But that boldness is important, and we are not being bold right now. Right now, we are spending 1/7. Our entire R&D budget on energy is 1/7 what it was in the original Apollo project. 1/7. Here we have the world melting down, and we're spending 1/7 as much as we did in inflation-adjusted dollars on our entire ENR budget, energy research budget. We're spending 25 times more money in Iraq today than we are saving the planet Earth from global warming and freeing ourselves from Middle Eastern oil. Now, isn't it a nice vision to start investing money so we don't have to be involved in wars engaging oil? That, to me, is a much better priority than spending 25 times more on that. So boldness is required. Enlightenment number 3, we must reject the tyranny of the present. And when I say reject the tyranny of the present, what I mean is we all are sort of in a box of sort of being stuck in the present status of technology. You know, like people, I talk about this solar power thing. And I talk to these guys and say, well, solar power costs more than coal-based electricity. And I go, yeah, today, you know, when we got the first generation of technology, but think ahead just a little tiny bit, you know, things get better. And my favorite quote in this book is from Benjamin Franklin, who, when he saw the very first hot air balloon in Paris, I don't know, 17, whatever it was, and some guy says, well, what'll that ever amount to? You know, what are the purposes of that? And he said, well, what are the purposes of a baby? And I think that's how we need to think about some of these technologies, that they're going to grow, and we've got to reject that straitjacket. Number 4, there are no silver bullets. And I think this is very important because everybody's going to kind of argue that, you know, wave power is the best, or, you know, solar is the best, or efficiency is the best. And I think it's important to realize it's going to be everything. There's nothing, one thing that is going to solve this. And that's important because everybody's always looking for the silver bullet. Number 5, everybody needs to get on the bus. And I quote Gandhi's, you all know it, when Gandhi said, "You must become the change you seek in the world," he could have been talking to those of us who desire a new American energy economy. We all are going to have to be involved in this individually. It's not just technologists who are going to solve this problem. We tell the story of Mike and Meg Town, who are teachers in Redmond, Washington, one of the soggiest places in America, who have a solar powered home with net zero CO2 coming out of their home. Okay, so there's some people who've really taken that to heart. Number 6, if government sets the road signs, the market will drive. And what I mean by that is that this is not going to be just a federal program. What the most important thing the government can do is to basically level the playing field between these new technologies and the old fossil fuel technologies. Now, right now, we have the most rotten, unfair economy in the world because the oil and gas company gets $30 billion a year in tax breaks. They get to put their carbon dioxide into the atmosphere in unlimited amounts at zero cost, and they're using up this scarce resource. The atmosphere is a limited ability to take in CO2. And it's kind of like the oil and gas companies or the coal-based utilities are taking their dump truck and they're driving it up to the city park in Bellingham and they're dumping their junk in the city park. And that's what they're doing in the atmosphere. Now that's a giant subsidy to the fossil fuel-based industry, and that has to stop. And it will as soon as my cap and trade system becomes law, which it will, I think, in the next 2 to 2.5 years, because we're going to cap the amount they can put in, and we're going to charge them for the privilege of doing that. So once we do that, that road sign will drive massive investment to these technologies. As soon as that cap and trade system is in place, you're going to see huge investments going to these, because now there's going to be a fair playing field, right? All we're trying to do is basically restore fairness to the market. And for those of us who will call us socialists or communists or pinheads or Martians or whatever they'll call us, we would point out all we're really doing is fixing a broken market that does not internalize costs. That's the only thing we're doing. So we're kind of the fans of Wall Street. And by the way, Wall Street's getting ready for this. I was in New York Monday morning talking to the folks at Wall Street who are even now beginning to design these carbon trading system markets. And I talked to 400 of these people that are already designing the system even before we pass the law. So this is a real thing. Enlightenment number 7, failure is an option. And I think this is a really important one. It's like this buoy sank, last week in Oregon. Yeah, buoys are going to sink. Airplanes are going to crash. Rockets are going to blow up. That's the nature of adventure and technological advance. And it's important to realize we're going to have failures on the way. We can't stop just because that happens. Number 8, prejudices are best left at the door. And this is kind of an important one and a controversial one. All of us have our prejudices, all of us. I'm prejudiced against the Washington State Cougars, even though I married one. Everybody has a prejudice, and everybody has an energy prejudice. Some people are prejudiced into not thinking there's global warming, and so they refuse to look at the science of it. Some people think, because of the destruction coal has caused, that coal should never be considered a potential source of energy if we can burn it cleanly. And I think it's important to put those prejudices aside and really look at the science. And this is an important issue, in the issue of whether we can do clean coal. Because there's a possibility that we can burn coal, strip out the CO2, inject it underground, and then have clean coal. And that's a distinct possibility. Some have argued we should not even think of that because coal has all been dirty in the past. My co-author and I believe that we should follow the MIT study that suggests that research is appropriate in this. So in fact that we can have clean coal, and I believe that that's a worthwhile investment. Number 9, clean energy will be powered by new politics. And the new politics I refer to is when we get a coalition that has never been formed before between the environmental community, the high-tech investment community, the farmers in the Midwest who are getting ready to grow advanced forms of biofuels, not corn ethanol, that's kind of just a basic form, but advanced forms, and the evangelical community that now is engaged fully in Washington, D.C., saying that we should take care of the Creator's creation, that coalition is going to move the ball politically. And that coalition is now developing right now as we speak. And we have now had the evangelical community coming in and try to enlighten some of my Republican colleagues and asking them to get on board this effort. And this is a great thing in this country if we have a bipartisan effort to do this. And the evangelical community is all aboard this. So that's good news. 10th one, the 10th Enlightenment's no more free lunches. No more free lunches, meaning no more tax giveaways to the fossil fuel industry. And we just passed a bill taking away $16 billion out of your pockets to give to the wealthiest corporations in world history when they're selling gas for $3 a gallon. So we're ending those free lunches, and then we'll have a fair statement. So anyway, those are kind of the Enlightenment. So we tell stories that illustrate each of those. And